Welcome to the Sci-Fi Alien channel, where the boundaries of space, adventure, and the unknown come alive. Today, we've got a story that will keep you on the edge of your seat, a tale of alien encounters, unexpected alliances, and shocking betrayals that could change everything for one planet on the edge of the galaxy. Imagine this: a seasoned human commander, Reker Davis, sent to the uncharted world of Nebulin 6, a planet filled with danger and mystery. His mission? To explore and make contact with the Lumina tribe, a peaceful race that shares their planet with the most terrifying apex predator, the Azure Phantom. But Reker doesn't approach the beast with weapons, he approaches with respect and an open hand. Can one human change the course of a planet by simply showing kindness to its deadliest predator? But just when it seems peace is within reach, a betrayal rocks the very foundation of this newfound alliance. Korth, a trusted Lumina warrior, makes a deal with the corporate invaders from Nexus Industries, setting the stage for a catastrophic battle. Will Reker and Anoya, the tribe's fierce leader, be able to protect Nebulin 6 and its sacred connection to the Azure Phantom? Or will corporate greed destroy everything they've fought for? The stakes are high, the tension is rising, and the future of Nebulin 6 hangs in the balance. How far will Reker go to stop a war that could ruin everything? Stay with us to find out how this epic story unfolds. In a universe where exploration often means conquest, where encounters with alien species are typically marked by military might and force, Commander Reker Davis stands apart. His mission on Nebulin 6, a planet on the fringes of the galaxy, isn't about fighting or taking control. It's about something far rarer in the history of interstellar conflict: respect. As the dropship descends through the thick atmosphere of Nebulin 6, the jungle below appears dense and overwhelming, an alien world teeming with life. But for Reker, a seasoned commander who has fought countless battles across the galaxy, this planet presents a challenge unlike any other. It's not the threat of warfare that weighs on him, but the opportunity to change the course of history by understanding rather than conquering. The planet is home to a native species, the Lumina, humanoid beings with bioluminescent markings that shimmer in the jungle's dim light. The Lumina live in harmony with their world, but their peace is constantly threatened by the Azure Phantom, a deadly apex predator. The Phantom is both feared and revered, a creature of such power and grace that it dominates the jungles of Nebulin 6, an entity that commands respect from every being who crosses its path. The Lumina see it as a necessary evil, a creature that must be feared and avoided, for it has taken many lives. Yet Reker sees something that the Lumina and others do not: a deep connection between the Phantom and the land. It's not just a monster, it's a part of the ecosystem, the living heartbeat of Nebulin 6. And this realization begins his approach to the planet's most feared creature, not with weapons, not with plans to kill or subdue, but with a silent plea for understanding. When Reker steps into the jungle for the first time, he is not armored in the usual sense. His tactical vest and gear are minimal, chosen for practicality, but his mind is fully armed with the belief that true strength lies in his ability to understand the life around him. Instead of reacting with fear or hostility, Reker makes a conscious choice to move quietly, respecting the jungle's delicate balance. His training as a soldier has taught him how to read the signs of danger, how to anticipate a threat before it materializes, but this time, he does something different. He approaches the world with open eyes, looking for opportunities to connect, to learn. The moment he encounters the Azure Phantom, it stands before him in its full terrifying glory. Its 6 massive legs propel its massive form, muscles rippling under skin that shimmers with a strange blue glow. Its eyes, a glowing violet, lock onto Reker, sizing him up. It could strike at any moment, its reflexes are honed by millennia of survival. Yet Reker doesn't move to draw his weapon. Instead, he stands still, his palms open at his sides, a universal gesture of peace. For a moment, the creature doesn't move. It studies him, assessing him just as Reker is assessing it. The jungle around them is still, silent, as if it, too, is waiting for what comes next. Then, slowly, the azure phantom steps forward, its huge form so close that Reker can feel the warmth of its breath, the power in its movements. There's no growl, no snarl, just a curiosity from the beast. Reker takes a deep breath, lowering himself to one knee, still maintaining eye contact. He's not afraid, but there is a certain awe in him, a recognition that this is no mere animal, no simple predator. This is a creature shaped by the forces of nature, just like him. Reker speaks softly, his voice calm, his tone almost reverent. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm just passing through your territory. The creature's deep violet eyes don't waver. For a long moment, it simply watches him, the tension in the air thick enough to almost touch. Then, in an almost imperceptible gesture, the phantom takes a step closer, its huge head tilting as it sniffs the air around Reker. This is the first true sign of the connection forming between them. Reker doesn't reach for his weapon. Instead, he extends his hand, slowly, deliberately, his palm facing upward. His breath is steady, and his heart beats not in fear, but in expectation. The phantom, after a long moment, moves closer. Its breath is warm and rich with the scent of the jungle, the strange metallic tang of something otherworldly, yet there is no aggression. The creature leans in and sniffs his hand, its enormous nose brushing against his skin. There is no attack. No violence. Just a moment of quiet recognition. You're not so scary, Reker murmurs softly, a smile playing at the corner of his lips. Just misunderstood, I bet. The phantom growls, a low rumbling sound that vibrates through the air, yet it's not a threat. Instead, it's a purr-like vibration, a communication of acceptance or perhaps a form of curiosity. The beast presses its head against Reker's hand, and in that single moment, something profound shifts. The phantom isn't just a wild animal anymore, it's a being that can be understood, a creature of depth and emotion, just like the Lumina people. The connection Reker makes with the Azure Phantom goes beyond simple survival. It's about respect for life in all its forms. Reker, who has fought in countless battles and encountered some of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, understands something profound in this moment. His power doesn't lie in weapons, tactics, or military might. His power lies in his ability to see beyond fear, to approach the unknown with a willingness to understand rather than destroy. In the following days, this bond with the Phantom becomes the cornerstone of his mission. It's not just about making allies with the Lumina tribe, it's about creating a new narrative. A narrative where creatures and people alike are seen for what they are at their core, beings with needs, fears, and desires, struggling to coexist in a universe that often values power above all else. For Reker, this isn't just a peaceful coexistence, it's a revolution in how we view strength. The typical response to a dangerous predator would be to kill it, subdue it, or avoid it. But Reker understands that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from overcoming an adversary but from embracing it, seeing it as an equal, and finding a way to live together. He teaches the Lumina this lesson, not through force, but through understanding. As the days unfold and the mission progresses, the bond between Reker, the Lumina, and the Phantom grows stronger. The tribe begins to see him as more than just an outsider. They see him as someone who doesn't just take from them, but someone who offers something far rarer: trust, and a shared vision for a future where the strength of all living things is valued, not feared. Reker's approach, grounded in respect and compassion, becomes the foundation of a new way forward for Nebulin 6. The once feared Azure Phantom becomes a symbol of what can be achieved when we choose to look past the surface and embrace the power of peaceful coexistence. Through his quiet strength, Reker shows that sometimes, the greatest battles are fought with the heart, not the weapon. And this, perhaps, is the greatest lesson the galaxy can learn. Anoya had always known the world in terms of fear and survival. As the daughter of Chief Foes, leader of the Lumina tribe, she had been raised with a deep understanding of the natural order on Nebulin 6. The Azure Phantom, a massive and deadly predator, was an integral part of that order, a creature that dominated the jungles with its raw power. The Lumina had learned to respect it, to avoid it at all costs, and to live with the constant threat of its presence. To Anoya, the Phantom was not just a beast, it was a symbol of the harshness of the world she inhabited. From a young age, she had been taught that strength was measured by the ability to overcome fear, to face threats head-on and conquer them. This belief had shaped her life, her worldview, and her expectations of how the galaxy worked. Everything had to be earned, nothing was given freely. People, planets, and even the most terrifying creatures, were all things that could be controlled or defeated if one was strong enough. In her eyes, the Azure Phantom was just another force of nature to be feared, a challenge to be faced and bested. That was the way of the world. When Commander Reker Davis arrived on Nebulin 6, Anoya viewed him with the same skepticism that she reserved for everything new and unfamiliar. Humans, to her, were just another unknown force, one that could either be an ally or a threat. She had heard stories of human explorers, of their arrogance, their tendency to conquer and impose their will on other worlds. She knew that the Galactic Federation often sent outsiders to places like Nebulin 6, and she assumed that Reker was just another soldier sent to gather intel, a person with his own agenda. But she could never have anticipated the radical difference in his approach. From the very beginning, Reker's attitude toward the Azure Phantom was different from any approach Anoya had ever seen. Most outsiders who had come to Nebulin 6 saw the Phantom as a threat to be eradicated, an obstacle to be removed from the planet. They were quick to recommend its extermination, to send troops or weapons to hunt it down and eliminate it for good. This had been the solution that the Lumina had grown used to: the beast must be killed if they were to truly live in peace. But Reker didn't come with weapons drawn. He didn't come to dominate or subdue. Instead, he came with calm and understanding, qualities Anoya had not expected in someone who could clearly handle a weapon as well as any warrior. His presence on the planet, though initially unsettling, was unlike any other. He was not a conqueror. He was a learner. Anoya had watched, from a distance at first, as Reker navigated the jungle with a quiet reverence for the land and its creatures. While other Federation members might have viewed the Phantom as nothing more than a deadly animal, Reker didn't react with fear. Instead, he approached it with a gesture of peace, standing still in front of it, offering his hand as if to say, "I come in goodwill." The Phantom, rather than attacking, seemed to pause, to consider this strange, unarmed human standing before it. For Anoya, this was both deeply unnerving and strangely fascinating. Could this be true? Could someone tame a creature so fierce, so deadly, without fear? As she observed, Anoya found herself grappling with emotions she didn't quite understand. There was disbelief at what she was witnessing, but also a stirring sense of awe. What if Reker was right? What if there was another way to relate to the Phantom, to the land, to the world around her? What if the solution wasn't to fight, to overcome, to impose one's will, but to understand, to coexist? Reker's relationship with the Phantom marked the beginning of a slow but profound shift within Anoya. The more she saw, the more she realized that Reker was not afraid of the Phantom, not because he was a warrior or a soldier, but because he saw it not as an enemy, but as a fellow living being. His ability to form a connection, not through force or violence, but through respect and patience, was something Anoya had never considered. It was so fundamentally different from everything she had known that she found herself questioning her beliefs, questioning the very foundation upon which she had built her life. The turning point came when Anoya found herself standing beside Reker as he interacted with the Phantom. They had ventured deeper into the jungle, and the creature had approached them once again, this time with less hesitation, its violet eyes studying both of them. Anoya felt the air grow heavy with tension. She had always believed that it was the tribe's role to protect their people from the Phantom, to fight when necessary, to keep it at bay. But Reker's actions, his calmness, his awareness of the creature's behavior, began to shift her understanding of what it meant to be strong. "I'm not here to hurt you," Reker had said softly to the Phantom. "I just want to understand." In that moment, something clicked inside Anoya. She could feel it, like a ripple in the air. The Phantom, sensing Reker's intentions, did not lunge, did not strike. Instead, it lowered its head, sniffing Reker's hand before brushing against it with a surprising gentleness. There was no aggression in the creature's movements, just a quiet acceptance. Anoya watched, her heart pounding in her chest, as this fierce predator allowed itself to be approached without violence. Reker, in his simple yet profound gesture, had proven something to her: respect could transcend fear. It could form bonds where once only conflict existed. For the first time, Anoya realized that her people's belief in dominance over the Phantom might have been misguided. She had spent her entire life believing that strength meant imposing control, that survival meant pushing others out of the way. But Reker, in his quiet strength, was teaching her that sometimes, true power lies in understanding and cooperation. The change was not immediate. Anoya didn't suddenly accept Reker's philosophy. It wasn't a switch that could be flipped, but a slow, steady realization. She spent more time with him, observing his interactions with both the Lumina people and the creatures of the jungle. She saw how Reker spoke with such respect to the elders of the tribe, how he took the time to learn from them rather than lecture them. She began to understand that strength didn't have to come from violence or coercion, it could come from connection, from shared understanding. But Anoya's transformation didn't stop there. As she began to change, she found herself questioning everything about her role within her tribe. She had always been taught that her duty was to protect her people through strength, through force if necessary. But now, she saw another path forward. Perhaps it wasn't about fighting the Phantom or other threats to the tribe. Perhaps it was about living in harmony with the world around them. In time, Anoya began to speak out in favor of a more peaceful approach. She suggested working with the Phantom, not against it. She began to see the creatures of the jungle, the land, and even the stars above not as things to dominate, but as partners in the grand dance of existence. Her transformation, once slow and hesitant, became a powerful force in the tribe. Anoya became the bridge between the old ways and the new, between fear and understanding. She found herself standing not just as the daughter of the chief, but as a leader in her own right, someone who could inspire change and lead her people toward a future built on cooperation, respect, and unity. Through Reker's example, Anoya learned that true strength is not found in how much we can control or conquer, but in how much we are willing to connect, to understand, and to grow alongside those around us, no matter how different they may seem. Her journey from skepticism to awe was not just about understanding Reker, it was about understanding herself and the world she lived in. And with this newfound wisdom, Anoya became a true leader, ready to guide her people into a future where respect and understanding were the true measures of strength. The Lumina tribe had long lived with a quiet understanding of their world. They were an ancient people, bound to the land and its creatures in ways that few outsiders could ever comprehend. For generations, they had watched as the towering, bioluminescent trees grew and faded, the stars blinked in the night sky, and the azure phantom, their most formidable and terrifying predator, haunted the jungles. The Lumina had adapted to this world by embracing fear as a constant companion, a necessary force to survive in a place where danger was never more than a breath away. Their way of life had always been shaped by one simple, unwavering principle: domination through survival. They believed that in order to thrive, one must always be the strongest. Strength was measured by the ability to defend one's territory, by the power to overcome threats, and by the resilience to endure hardship. Every aspect of their culture, every tradition, every belief, was tied to the necessity of control. The azure phantom, the creature that roamed their land with untamed might, had become the symbol of this brutal philosophy. It was a force that demanded fear, a creature that had claimed the lives of many of their bravest warriors. For the Lumina, the phantom was not a being to be understood or respected, but a monster to be conquered or avoided at all costs. When Commander Reker Davis first arrived on Nebulin 6, his mission was simple: to study and observe. Yet, for the Lumina, his arrival was like an intrusion, an unknown variable in a world that had long operated on its own unchallenged rules. To them, Reker was an outsider, a human who could only see their world through the lens of his galactic training, a training that valued strength and efficiency above all else. His presence was unsettling, and his peaceful approach to the azure phantom was viewed as naive and, to many, dangerous. The idea that a human, a mere soldier, could approach the most feared predator on the planet without weapons, without hesitation, was incomprehensible. How could he not fear it? At first, Anoya, the daughter of chief foes, could not see the value in Reker's actions. She had lived her entire life within the boundaries of the Lumina's understanding of survival, where fear was a constant, and strength was everything. Peace was a concept that had never truly existed for her people. Peace could not be achieved without dominance, and the phantom, she believed, was something that needed to be controlled. Reker's refusal to treat the creature as a threat, his willingness to walk into the jungle unarmed, without weapons, felt like recklessness to her. But as time passed, she began to see the quiet wisdom in his actions. He wasn't being reckless, he was showing the Lumina something they had never considered before: that respect could be more powerful than fear. The shift in Anoya's perception was gradual but profound. It was not just about Reker's relationship with the Phantom, it was about the way he treated the entire world around him. He respected the jungle, its creatures, its rhythms. He didn't view the land as something to be controlled, but as something to be understood. He wasn't here to conquer, he was here to learn. And as Reker's presence began to weave its way into the very fabric of the Lumina's lives, Anoya couldn't help but feel that something new was awakening within her people, a realization that their world didn't have to be defined by the tension between fear and survival. As the tribe watched Reker and the Phantom interact, the tension in the air began to change. Instead of preparing for a battle, they saw Reker kneel before the beast, not as a conqueror but as a companion, extending his hand without the need for force or aggression. The Phantom, once the embodiment of danger, responded not with violence but with curiosity. It was as if the creature could sense something in Reker that it had never encountered before, a recognition of its worth, not as a threat, but as a fellow living being. A being that, like the Lumina themselves, was a part of this world. For the first time, Anoya saw the phantom not as a predator but as a creature to be understood. It wasn't a monster, it was part of the delicate balance of life on Nebulin 6, just as the Lumina were. And this realization started to reshape the very core of Anoya's beliefs. If the phantom could be approached with understanding, then perhaps all the creatures of their world could be seen through a different lens, not as obstacles to be avoided or conquered, but as parts of a greater whole. Everything was interconnected. The more Anoya witnessed Reker's calm influence on the tribe and the land, the more she realized that the way forward for the Lumina was not through domination, but through harmony. Reker wasn't here to impose his will on Nebulin 6. He wasn't here to change their culture or destroy their ways. He was here to offer them a different perspective, one in which coexistence and mutual respect were the true forms of strength. And the more Anoya reflected on this, the more she understood that her people had been living in the shadow of fear for far too long. The Lumina tribe had spent generations fearing the phantom, but Reker had shown them that fear could be replaced by trust. The phantom no longer had to be an enemy, it could be a guardian. The true strength of Nebulin 6, she now saw, was not in the ability to conquer or control, but in the ability to understand and coexist with the forces of nature. This was a radical shift, one that required not just physical strength, but a mental and emotional transformation. The Lumina needed to evolve, not just in how they interacted with the creatures around them, but in how they saw themselves. For Anoya, this was a deeply personal journey. She had spent her life training to lead her people in the ways of battle, in the ways of survival. Her identity had been shaped by the knowledge that strength meant protection, and protection meant fearlessness. But as she saw the Lumina begin to change their views, she realized that the greatest leaders weren't those who simply led through force, but those who led through wisdom, empathy, and the ability to unite people in a common cause. The Lumina weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for a future where peace and understanding could coexist. As Anoya grew into this new role, she began to advocate for a future where the Lumina no longer saw their world through the lens of fear. She encouraged her people to embrace the idea that they were part of something much larger than themselves, something that thrived on cooperation, not conflict. The Lumina tribe would no longer be defined by their struggle to survive against the phantom or any other force. Instead, they would be defined by their ability to coexist, to respect the planet and all of its creatures, and to find peace in the strength of unity. In the end, the Lumina tribe's awakening wasn't just about changing how they viewed the phantom, it was about changing how they viewed themselves and their place in the universe. They realized that true strength was not about overpowering the world around them. It was about finding balance with it, about learning to live in harmony with all that existed. And as Anoya led her people into this new era, she understood that their journey was just beginning, a journey that would redefine what it meant to be strong and wise in a world filled with both beauty and danger. Nebulin 6 had always been a world of mysteries, a place where the laws of nature were respected and where the creatures of the land lived in a delicate balance. To the Lumina tribe, it was their home, a sacred space they had long protected and revered. The planet's isolation in the galaxy had allowed it to remain untouched by the greed and corruption that so often tainted the rest of the universe. However, the peace that had endured for so long was about to be shattered. A corporate force, Nexus Industries, arrived with a singular goal: to exploit Nebulin 6's rich resources, particularly a rare mineral known as luminite. The first signs of trouble came when the massive, metallic ships of Nexus Industries descended from the sky, their imposing structures cutting through the atmosphere with efficiency and precision. To the Lumina, it was a sight they had never before witnessed: sleek, industrial technology landing amidst the untamed beauty of their jungle. The ships brought with them more than just machinery, they brought a shadow, a looming threat that would change the fate of their world forever. For the Lumina tribe, this was more than a simple invasion, it was the beginning of an existential battle. Luminite, the glowing mineral that pulsed beneath the surface of Nebulin 6, was not just a resource. It was the lifeblood of their world, a substance that powered the bioluminescent life forms and kept the ecological balance intact. The creatures, the trees, and even the azure phantom itself were tied to the mineral. For centuries, the Lumina had lived in harmony with the land, understanding that the Luminite was sacred. It was not to be harvested or exploited, it was to be protected. But Nexus Industries had no such reverence for the land. To them, it was merely a resource, one that could be stripped, extracted, and sold for profit. Nexus's arrival sparked an immediate and profound shift in the balance of power on Nebulin 6. The corporation's intentions were clear: they were here to mine the planet's precious resources, and the lives of the Lumina and the Azure Phantom were secondary. The corporate machines rolled across the land, tearing into the earth, drilling for minerals with no regard for the ecological havoc they were causing. The Lumina tribe, deeply connected to the planet, could feel the damage. The air felt heavier, the ground less stable, and the jungle, once teeming with life, began to show signs of deterioration. The threat was immediate, but it wasn't just the physical devastation that worried the Lumina. It was the disrespect for their way of life, for their beliefs and values. The Lumina had always understood the world as a place where every living being had a role, where the jungle, the creatures, and even the phantom were part of a delicate, interconnected web. Nexus Industries did not see Nebulin 6 in this way. For them, it was a commodity, a thing to be used, exploited, and discarded when it no longer served its purpose. Reker Davis, who had come to Nebulin 6 to observe and understand, quickly realized the magnitude of the threat. While he had initially been focused on gathering information about the Lumina and the Phantom, he could no longer ignore the corporate force that was poised to destroy everything he had come to respect. Nexus Industries wasn't just threatening the land and the ecosystem, they were threatening the very essence of what made Nebulin 6 special. The corporation's presence was an invasion of the spirit of the planet, an attack on its soul. As Reker watched the machines tear into the land, he felt a growing sense of urgency. His mission had shifted. This wasn't just about diplomacy anymore, it was about survival. The Lumina, who had spent generations living in peace with their world, now found themselves faced with an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. Nexus didn't understand the concept of respect for nature, nor did they care for the spiritual connection that the Lumina had with their planet. In their eyes, the Lumina were nothing more than obstacles standing in the way of progress, a people who could be bought or crushed if necessary. The moral battle between the Lumina and Nexus Industries was not just a matter of physical force, it was a battle of values, of how one chooses to interact with the world. The Lumina, led by Anoya and Reker, saw their struggle as more than just a defense of their territory. They were fighting to protect a way of life, a philosophy that valued coexistence over exploitation. They were fighting to preserve the balance of Nebulin 6, a balance that Nexus threatened to destroy for the sake of profit. The corporate threat became even more immediate when Nexus mercenaries, armed with weapons far beyond the technology of the Lumina, began to patrol the land, securing the mining sites and intimidating the locals. The Lumina had never faced such aggression, force and domination were foreign concepts to them. But now, as their home was ravaged by the corporation's machinery, the Lumina had no choice but to prepare for a fight. They could no longer stand idly by and watch as their world was torn apart. They needed to act, to protect the sacredness of their land, and they needed to do it before it was too late. Reker, whose journey had started as a simple mission of diplomacy, found himself at the heart of this battle. He was no longer just an outsider studying an alien culture, he had become an ally in a desperate struggle for the future of Nebulin 6. His belief in the importance of respect, understanding, and peaceful coexistence was put to the test as he realized that sometimes, the only way to protect peace is through force. But even in the face of violence, Reker never lost sight of his core belief, that the true strength of a people lies not in their ability to destroy, but in their ability to defend what is rightfully theirs. Anoya, too, had changed. The woman who once believed in dominance and strength as the only tools for survival now saw that her people had a responsibility to defend not just their land, but their values. The battle with Nexus Industries wasn't just about protecting their homes, it was about protecting their identity, their culture, and their relationship with the land. They were fighting for something far greater than their physical survival, they were fighting to keep the heart of Nebulin 6 alive. The final confrontation with Nexus Industries was not just about winning a battle, it was about sending a message, that Nebulin 6 would not be easily conquered, that its people would not be subjugated. The corporation had underestimated the power of the planet, of the Lumina, and of the human who had come to understand and respect them. Reker's leadership, his unwavering belief in the value of cooperation and understanding, became the catalyst that ignited the spiritual and physical resistance of the Lumina. In the end, the battle wasn't won by force alone, it was won by the resilience of a people who refused to let their world be taken from them. Nexus Industries was forced to retreat, not because they lacked firepower, but because they couldn't understand the depth of what they were trying to destroy. The Lumina had shown them that some things are not meant to be exploited, they are meant to be protected, cherished, and respected. The threat from Nexus Industries had been defeated, but the lesson lingered, that greed and exploitation can never truly conquer what is most sacred. Strength comes not from taking, but from protecting. And the battle for Nebulin 6 was only the beginning of a larger struggle, a struggle to ensure that the forces of destruction would never again have the chance to corrupt the land or the people who call it home. The Lumina tribe had long been a people bound by their traditions, their beliefs, and the sacred connection they shared with the land of Nebulin 6. For centuries, they had thrived in peaceful coexistence with their world, their relationship with the creatures of the jungle and the natural forces of their planet built on respect and understanding. But as the Lumina faced their greatest threat from Nexus Industries, a shadow loomed over their unity, a betrayal that would strike at the heart of everything they believed in. Korth was a warrior of the Lumina, strong and respected among his people. He had grown up with the same beliefs as the others, raised to understand the importance of strength and resilience in the face of danger. His loyalty to his tribe and his people was unquestioned, or so it seemed. He had always been one of the tribe's fiercest protectors, defending the village against the dangers of the jungle, including the Azure Phantom. The Phantom, once a symbol of terror, had become the focus of the Lumina's struggle for survival. And for Korth, it had become a personal matter. His brother had been killed by the Phantom, a tragedy that had left him broken and consumed by grief. Korth's pain was something Anoya, as the daughter of chief foes, had always understood. She had seen the warrior's torment, the way the loss of his brother had hardened him, pushing him toward a desire for vengeance. His desire to see the Phantom destroyed was understandable, his loss had clouded his judgment and consumed him with a need for retribution. Yet, despite his pain, Korth had always been a part of the Lumina's efforts to make peace with the Phantom, to understand the creature's role in the balance of Nebulin 6. But as the threat of Nexus Industries grew, something inside Korth began to shift, a dark, dangerous shift that would lead to an unexpected betrayal. At first, no one could have anticipated Korth's defection. The tribe was united, and the coming confrontation with Nexus Industries was framed as a fight to protect the very soul of their world. The Lumina, alongside Reker, were preparing to defend their land, their values, and their way of life. The corporation's machines had begun to ravage the land, but the Lumina had found renewed strength in their unity and their shared belief in the sanctity of their world. However, Korth, despite his outward participation in the resistance, had already made a choice, one that would tear his people apart. As tensions between the Lumina and Nexus escalated, Korth disappeared into the jungle, alone. It wasn't an unusual occurrence for a warrior to venture into the wilderness, but this time, there was an unsettling silence to his departure. When he returned, it was not with the resolve of a warrior prepared for battle, but with the cold determination of someone who had already made his decision. Korth's eyes were different now, harder, more calculating, and his loyalty no longer rested with the Lumina. Unbeknownst to anyone, Korth had struck a deal with Nexus Industries. Driven by his grief, his desire for power, and the belief that the Lumina would never be able to defeat the corporation, Korth had betrayed his people. He had promised to hand over the tribe's sacred Luminite to Nexus in exchange for protection and a share of the profits from the mining operation. The corporation's promises of wealth and power had clouded his judgment, and Korth had allowed his pain and his desire for vengeance to lead him down a dark path. The betrayal came to light when Korth led a group of Nexus mercenaries straight to the heart of the Lumina village. The mercenaries, armed with advanced weaponry, were not here to negotiate, they were here to secure the Luminite and crush any resistance. Korth, holding the sacred Luminite crystal in his hands, stood beside the mercenaries, the very essence of his people's power now a tool of destruction in his grip. His presence at the front of the enemy line, his alliance with those who sought to strip the planet of its resources, was a painful and devastating blow to the Lumina. Reker, who had fought alongside the Lumina, who had shared their vision for peace and unity, was shaken by the revelation. The man he had trusted, the warrior he had believed to be an ally, was now an enemy, a traitor who had chosen the promises of corporate power over the survival of his people. The betrayal cut deeper because it was not just an act of treason, it was the destruction of everything they had fought for. Korth had sold out his own people, his brother's legacy, and the very future of Nebulin 6. The pain of betrayal spread quickly through the tribe, especially to Anoya. As the daughter of the chief, she had always carried the weight of her people's survival on her shoulders, but this was something deeper. This was not just a threat from an outside force, it was a betrayal from within. Korth had been a trusted warrior, a man who had fought for the tribe's survival. And now, he had chosen to side with the enemy, the very force that sought to destroy everything they held sacred. As Korth stood with the Nexus forces, the weight of his actions became clear to him. For all his anger, for all his grief, he had failed to understand one crucial thing: the Luminite was not a commodity to be traded or exploited, it was the heart of their world. It was the bond between the Lumina and the creatures of the jungle, the very force that connected them to the planet. By handing it over, Korth wasn't just betraying his tribe, he was betraying the planet itself. But Korth was too far gone in his desire for power, his desperation for a world where he could finally be in control. As the mercenaries moved to secure the Luminite, Korth faced the tribe he had once sworn to protect. His eyes met Anoya's, and for a brief moment, there was a flicker of the man he once was, a brother, a son, a warrior. But that flicker was quickly extinguished by the fire of his greed and pain. Korth had made his choice, and there was no going back. As the confrontation with the Nexus forces unfolded, the Lumina were left with a bitter truth: they could no longer trust Korth. His betrayal was a harsh reminder that even the most noble causes could be undone by human weakness and desperation. The fight was no longer just about surviving the corporate invaders. It was about confronting the internal conflict that had threatened to tear their tribe apart. In the end, Korth's betrayal was not just an act of personal treason, it was a lesson for the Lumina. They had always believed in the power of unity, in the strength that came from understanding each other and the world around them. But Korth's actions showed them that even the deepest bonds could be broken, that even the strongest tribe could fall prey to the darkness of self-interest and grief. The final resolution of Korth's fate would come not through violence, but through the tribe's ability to move past his betrayal. It would be a test of their strength, not just in battle, but in their ability to forgive, to heal, and to reclaim their future. The journey was not over, but the path forward would no longer be defined by fear of the Phantom, or the corporate greed of Nexus. It would be defined by their resilience, their commitment to each other, and the knowledge that betrayal, though painful, could never extinguish their hope. As the sun set on Nebulin 6, casting long shadows over the jungle, the tension in the air felt almost tangible. The Lumina tribe, once peaceful and harmonious with the planet, now stood on the brink of annihilation. The arrival of Nexus Industries had brought with it an invasion of unprecedented proportions. Their machines tore into the earth, digging into the planet's sacred resources without a shred of respect for the delicate balance that had been maintained for millennia. Korth's betrayal, a betrayal that cut deep into the heart of the Lumina people, had only added fuel to the fire. The Lumina now faced an enemy that was not only external, but internal as well, a force that threatened to shatter their unity. The stakes were higher than ever before. With Nexus Industries prepared to strip the land of its life-giving Luminite, and the Lumina divided by Korth's treachery, it seemed as though the world was on the brink of collapsing under the weight of greed and betrayal. The once vibrant jungle, home to the Azure Phantom and countless other species, now stood on the edge of destruction, its future uncertain. Yet, in this darkest of moments, a force greater than any weapon or machine began to stir beneath the surface of Nebulin 6. The planet, long viewed by outsiders as a quiet, remote world, was not as passive as it seemed. Its heart, its very soul, had been connected to the Lumina and the Azure Phantom for centuries. This bond, this deep, unbreakable relationship between the planet, its creatures, and the Lumina, was now about to awaken in a way no one could have anticipated. Reker, who had come to the planet with the intention of fostering peace, now found himself at the heart of a battle for the very soul of Nebulin 6. He had always believed that true strength came from understanding, from coexistence, and from mutual respect. But in the face of Nexus's destruction, he understood that sometimes, the greatest strength must be drawn from the Earth itself. The planet was not merely a passive witness to the destruction, it was alive, and it had been listening. The first sign of change came quietly. Reker, accompanied by Anoya and a small group of Lumina warriors, ventured deep into the jungle, where the Luminite veins pulsed faintly beneath the ground. The air felt different, as though the very earth was holding its breath. The jungle, which had once felt alive with the hum of nature, now felt suffocating, strangely still, as if waiting for something. Reker could feel it, a subtle shift beneath his feet. The planet, it seemed, was preparing to fight back. As they approached the mining site, the ground seemed to hum with energy. The familiar pulse of the planet's bioluminescence had dimmed, but it was still there, a faint echo that called out to them. The Lumina warriors, once hesitant to fully trust the human commander, now moved with purpose, sensing that the planet was not simply a place to be fought over, it was a living entity, one that could stand up for itself. They no longer saw their struggle as just a fight for their homes, but as a fight for the life force of Nebulin 6 itself. The moment of awakening came when Reker, understanding the deep connection he had formed with the land, reached out to the Luminite crystal. In the quietest of moments, as his fingers brushed the surface, a surge of energy coursed through the ground. It wasn't just the Luminite that responded, it was the jungle itself, the creatures, the trees, the very atmosphere. The energy that pulsed through the planet was not just a physical force, it was a spiritual one, a force that connected every living thing on Nebulin 6 in a way that was beyond human comprehension. The land, which had been quietly suffering under the weight of Nexus's machines, was beginning to fight back. The next moments were nothing short of surreal. The massive mining equipment, which had been tearing into the land for days, suddenly shuddered to a halt. The drills that had been boring deep into the earth froze, as if caught by an invisible hand. The Luminite veins, once seen as mere resources to be harvested, began to glow brighter, their energy flowing like rivers of light beneath the surface. It was as though the planet itself had awakened from a long slumber, and now, in the face of the corporate invaders, it was ready to defend itself. Reker, standing in the heart of the jungle, watched in awe as the energy of the planet flowed outward, reaching into every corner of the world. The Azure Phantom, once a terror of the tribe, now emerged from the depths of the jungle, its massive form moving with a quiet grace. The creature's bioluminescent markings began to glow brighter, pulsating in sync with the planet's energy. And it wasn't alone. As if drawn by some primal force, other creatures of the jungle, massive beasts, strange winged entities, and creatures Reker had never seen before, began to appear, gathering together at the edges of the battle. It was as if the entire ecosystem of Nebulin 6 had awoken to defend itself. Nexus's mercenaries, who had been confident in their technological superiority, were now facing something they couldn't understand. The machines they had relied on began to malfunction, their circuits frying as the planet's energy surged through the ground. The once immense mining rigs trembled and sputtered, their metal frames bending and breaking as if the very earth itself was rejecting them. The Luminite, once just a commodity, now became the weapon of the planet, shattering the machines with its energy, forcing the invaders back. The true climax of the battle wasn't in the weapons or the combat. It was in the moment when the planet's energy, combined with the strength of the Lumina and the creatures, overwhelmed the invaders. The Nexus mercenaries, who had once believed they could conquer this world, now found themselves faced with a force beyond their understanding. They were not fighting a tribe, they were fighting a living, breathing planet. The Earth fought not with weapons, but with the sheer force of life itself, a force that rejected exploitation and destruction. The corporate greed that had once seemed so powerful now stood impotent in the face of the planet's will. As the battle reached its peak, Korth, who had once betrayed his people and joined forces with Nexus, watched in stunned silence. He had thought the fight was over, that the Lumina were too weak to stand against the corporation. But in this moment, he saw something that no one had ever predicted: the planet itself was fighting for its survival, for its people. The Lumina were no longer alone. The Azure Phantom and the creatures of the jungle stood by their side, and together, they formed a force more powerful than any weapon Nexus could bring to bear. In the end, the battle was not won through force or violence, but through the unity of all living things on Nebulin 6, the planet's energy, the creatures, and the Lumina tribe. The Nexus forces, overwhelmed by the sheer power of life, retreated, leaving behind the remnants of their broken machines and their shattered dreams of conquest. The planet had fought back, and in doing so, it had not only protected itself but had also ensured that the future of Nebulin 6 would be shaped by those who understood the value of coexistence. As Reker stood amidst the jungle, now alive with the hum of nature, he realized that this was the true power of Nebulin 6, not its resources, not its creatures, but the life force that connected them all. The battle for the planet had been won, not by human might or corporate greed, but by the shared strength of all who called Nebulin 6 home. And in this victory, Reker knew that the future of Nebulin 6 would no longer be defined by those who sought to exploit it, but by those who sought to protect it. The battle for Nebulin 6 had come to an end, but in its wake, the future of the planet remained uncertain. The Nexus Industries forces had retreated, leaving behind their broken machines and their shattered dreams of domination. The Lumina tribe, though victorious, stood at a crossroads. The jungle, once teeming with life but threatened by destruction, was beginning to heal. Yet, the victory they had won was not just over the corporation, it was over the very notion of exploitation, of seeing a planet and its people as mere commodities to be consumed and discarded. In the aftermath of the battle, the Lumina tribe had to confront the reality of what had been lost, but also what had been gained. They had witnessed the awakening of the planet itself, as the Earth and the creatures that inhabited it had fought back against the invaders. The Azure Phantom, the very creature that had once been seen as a terror, had become an unlikely ally, a symbol of the power that Nebulin 6 had hidden beneath its surface. And Reker, the human who had come to the planet as an outsider, now stood as a part of that united force, no longer just a soldier but a bridge between worlds, between the Lumina and the creatures they had once feared. The sacred Luminite, the source of the planet's power and the very life force of the Lumina, had been protected. Yet, the cost of this protection was not just in the battle fought against Nexus but in the trust that had been broken, most notably, the betrayal by Korth. The warrior, once a hero in the eyes of his people, had become the very face of treachery. His actions, driven by grief, revenge, and the temptation of corporate power, had threatened to destroy everything the Lumina held dear. But in the end, it was his betrayal that had revealed the true strength of the tribe, a strength not derived from force or violence, but from the power of unity and understanding. For Anoya, the daughter of chief foes, the events that had unfolded were nothing short of transformative. Her perception of her people, of the world, and of herself had shifted in ways that she could not have anticipated. In the face of corporate greed, in the wake of Korth's betrayal, and through the powerful bond she had formed with Reker, Anoya had come to realize that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy but in the ability to protect. She understood now that the Lumina tribe, and the planet itself, were not isolated entities, they were part of a larger ecosystem, a world where every creature, every plant, and every force in nature had a role to play. The Lumina no longer needed to fight to dominate the land, they needed to fight to preserve it. Reker, too, had changed. What began as a mission of exploration and reconnaissance had turned into something much more profound. He had not only witnessed the strength of the Lumina and their world, but he had come to understand that there was more to life than just survival. He had learned, through the bond he had formed with Anoya and the Azure Phantom, that the greatest strength a person, or a planet, could possess was not a weapon, but a commitment to the well-being of others, and to the land that sustained them all. He had come to see Nebulin 6 not as a mere assignment, but as a world worth protecting, a place that held the keys to a future where coexistence could thrive. The resolution that followed the battle was not just about rebuilding the physical damage done to the planet, it was about rebuilding the trust that had been broken, and forging a new path forward. For the Lumina, the journey ahead was one of reconciliation. They had to confront the scars left by Korth's betrayal, to rebuild the relationships within their tribe that had been fractured by the choices of one man. But more than that, they had to accept the truth, that the way they had lived for so long, based on fear and domination, could no longer be their path forward. They had to embrace the reality that the true strength of Nebulin 6 lay not in its resources or its warriors, but in the harmony that could be created between all living beings. For Korth, the price of his betrayal was steep. His choices had torn apart the trust of his people, and the consequences of his actions could not be easily undone. But there was still hope for him, a chance for redemption. The Lumina, led by Anoya and chief foes, understood that true forgiveness was not about erasing the past, but about accepting the lessons learned from it and using those lessons to create a better future. The tribe did not turn its back on Korth, but instead offered him a chance to prove that he could be a part of the healing process, not just for himself, but for the entire world. It was a chance for Korth to learn that healing was not about power or control, it was about understanding and restoration. In the aftermath, the Lumina tribe began to rebuild their world, but not in the way they had before. They no longer sought to control the Azure Phantom or the jungle. Instead, they worked to coexist with the creatures of the land, forming bonds of mutual respect and understanding. The Luminite, once seen as a commodity to be exploited, became a symbol of their new path forward. They used its energy not to build weapons or machines of war, but to sustain their world, to fuel their villages, and to power their communities in a way that honored the planet, not drained it. Reker, now seen as more than just an outsider, chose to remain on Nebulin 6, not out of obligation, but out of a deep respect for the people he had come to know and the world he had come to love. He understood that his work was far from over. The Lumina tribe, once divided by fear and suspicion, was now united in a new vision for the future. They had learned the value of respect over domination, and they were determined to protect their home, not with weapons, but with the strength of their unity and the wisdom they had gained from their struggles. The victory over Nexus Industries was not just a physical one, it was a spiritual victory, a victory that proved the true power of Nebulin 6 lay not in its resources, but in the connection between its people, its creatures, and the land itself. The planet had not been conquered, it had been saved, and in the process, the Lumina tribe had been reborn. They had found a new way forward, one that valued harmony over fear, cooperation over domination, and love over violence. As the first light of a new dawn broke over Nebulin 6, Reker stood with Anoya and chief foes, looking out over the jungle that had once seemed so dangerous but now felt like home. They had fought for this world, for each other, and for a future where the true power of Nebulin 6 could flourish. The future was uncertain, but it was a future they would face together, a future of peace, understanding, and hope. The battle for Nebulin 6 had been won, but the real work had just begun. And in that work, they would find not just survival, but something far greater, a new beginning.